about dojos. And for those of you who don't know what a dojo is, it's what we're calling our immersive learning program at Verizon. I just thought I'd share that photograph with you. That's I took that 20 years ago, standing in Times Square, and it's kind of cool how technology's changed. I had to use a real camera with black and white film to go into a dark room and develop it. So I was going through my stuff, figuring out I'd share that with you. A little bit about me. Most of my experience has been with very large companies, so I'm not kind of a startup guy. The IT organizations that I work in usually number in, like 1,000 to like tens of thousands of developers. Best way to get a hold of me is just email me. I'm not an omni-channel guy either, so it's just straight out email. I find if I have one channel, it's better to manage. Agenda for today, I'll talk about why the dojos are a good learning model for a company like Verizon, which is where I'm from. 3 philosophies of the dojo. It's kind of the credo that all the coaches live by who coach in the dojo. The structure of a dojo, so I'll take you kind of like what a typical team goes through. All the stuff that we've learned, and then hopefully if my video works, I will share an internal marketing video that we had created for you guys. Actually for internally for the dojos to market, but it's a cool video, so I thought I'd share that. So the challenge at Verizon where is huge. We're talking about upscaling and upskilling 16,000 engineers in DevOps, right? So our learning, it's not like we can just send people like 20 at a time to a program to learn DevOps, right? The model that we came up with is something that is suited to learn DevOps at scale. I just have to mention that we do have a booth outside, so please, do come and visit us. Would love to interact with you guys. So I'll take you to a tour. This is the dojo that I work in. It's in Piscataway, New Jersey. We've got 3 U.S. dojos and we've got 2 international dojos. A lot of them have kind of the same format. It's very cool space. Where I took this photograph from is something we call our demo lounge. A giant screen comes down and we do fun things like look at Jenkins builds and test-driven development. So really exciting stuff that no one cares about except the people in the dojo. This is like when the first Jenkins build goes live, we all kind of just spray. I'm joking. This is we actually are very fortunate to have a gym in every location, and personal trainers will come into the dojo and we will do these things called stretch breaks with all the people that are there. So this is one such shot. So in addition to DevOps, we have found that when we combine Agile principles and product thinking, design thinking, together, we get an acceleration effect in the team, right? So kind of like what some of the speakers have said before, is for engineers to orient towards understanding more about the customer, more about what the products that they're building. Right? So we combine all of these 3 practices in kind of a unique format. Dojo really, it's a Japanese word. It means place of the way. Originally, dojos were attached to learning halls. The concept of an engineering dojo comes from Target, where Ross was. When Ross came over, Ross was basically brought over. One of the reasons is to start this engineering dojos at Verizon. We're fortunate enough to have some of the coaches also that were working in the Target dojo who are now at Verizon coaching folks like me. right, so the three philosophies we have. The first philosophy is this thing called sticky learning. Now, I really wish, like when Neo got plugged into the Matrix, that's how I could teach people DevOps, right? Like I could just load the program, be like, learn CI, learn resilience. But it doesn't work that way, and especially when you're talking about 16,000 engineers, and especially when you're talking about teams that are at all different kinds of, different places in their journey into what they're doing. So some of the basic stuff, yes, knowledge, you read blogs, you gain some knowledge, you go to conferences, you gain some knowledge. But the thing that we focus a lot on in the dojo is context, constraints, and perspective, right? So we ask teams, bring your work in, right? And that's context. Bring in your work, bring in your backlog, bring in your challenges, because each team is different, and we want to meet you where you're at. Constraints, we have, since dojos are part of Verizon, we have all of the same constraints that any team does. We have the same network, we have the same security policies, we have all of the same things that a team goes through, we also have that. And so when teams learn within their context and constraints, they learn faster, right? Stuff works because we're doing it inside. And then this concept of perspective where, we bring in a developer and a QA and an operations person and a product owner. And when they're sitting right next to each other, they'll understand better what that person goes through, right? Typically at places like Verizon, teams are really far apart, right? In some cases across geographic boundaries. So we change that, we make the team see things from a different perspective. The second philosophy is this thing we call shared understanding. And it comes from a guy named David Kelly. Maybe you've heard of this firm Idea. They worked with Apple a lot. They designed the first mouse. And it's this belief that a good product, a good outcome, doesn't happen in isolation, right? It's not like somebody has an idea and then you ship it over to IT to do that. You need to do things together. You need to talk through things together. So we call that shared understanding. And the third thing is this thing called Dude's Law. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's a nice little equation to kind of sum up that the value that you deliver is a fraction of your why you're doing things versus how you're doing things, right? So if you, as an IT organization, focus more on how you're doing things, your value goes down, right? If you focus on why you're doing things, your customer's value comes up. This formula comes from a guy named David Hussman. He runs a company called DevJam. The reason it's called Dude's Law is he kind of looks like the Big Lebowski, the dude from Big Lebowski. So those are the three philosophies. Now I'll take you through kind of what a typical dojo structure would look like. Before we bring a team into the dojo, we will have a 4-hour session with them. We will ask them questions like, why are you doing what you're doing? What's the value to the customer? We'll ask them what are their learning goals, right? You want to learn, in this case, this team, this is one of our network teams that actually, the IT support system that lays the fiber, right? For things like the internet. So this team came in and they were having a particular problem with the time it took to install certain networking equipment. It took 60 days. And this team came in that said, we want to work on a project that we want to reduce it down to 7 to 14 days. And so that's our context. They also wanted to learn some microservices and deploy on Cloud Foundry, right? So we created a unique experience for them because of their requirements. Chartering lasts 4 hours. Some of the key things in chartering are we really get down to the learning goals, and we get down to the business goals, and we also get down to some of the things that the the team members want to teach each other. Right? Once chartering is done, and it's a paper exercise, we will put the documents where they're going to sit in the dojo. The idea being that when they see that every day, they're more likely to keep their focus and to understand some of the goals. It's also a good tool for the coaches. And typically we have more than one coaches in the dojo. So for a coach to quickly kind of see what a team is working on, we keep a lot of these giant sheets of paper around. Each effort in the dojo, it's called a challenge, right? It's not like it's kind of counterculture to this word project, which has a really bad meaning in IT. So we call it a challenge. It lasts 6 weeks. So the team is actually with us in the dojo doing this for 6 weeks. It begins, and in this case, this team, the same network team, they brought in their business partners from the tri-state region. Right? So we had network engineers that actually planned the network. We had network planners. And then we actually had the field operations, the people that go out and install the network equipment. So we had this big group in the dojo, like 40 people. And typically when that happens, and we also had IT there, and we flew up some of their quality assurance people as well from Virginia. And typically when a team comes in and they're working on something new, I'll use a technique called story mapping, and that's me in the back there using this technique. And you can find out more about this technique. It's from a guy named Jeff Patton. He's written a book called User Story Mapping. So definitely encourage you to, if you want to learn more, to explore that. I think it's a valuable technique for all people involved in DevOps should be using. So we do this exercise called story mapping. The idea is that there's a lot of different talk going on, and we need to capture that, and we need to make a basic flow out of the system. And that also has the effect of creating a shared understanding with all the people involved. And this is what we're going to build. Once we finish with the story mapping, we go right into our version of Agile. Each sprint in the dojo lasts 2.5 days. Now, typically that scares teams because of the short duration. But we don't do that to pressure teams. We do that as a coaching tool, as well as a couple other reasons. But since we only have the team for 6 weeks, we want to make sure that if there's something going wrong, we can course correct. In the case of this team, we found out that there was some downstream dependencies. We needed some people from another application. And so we actually flew that person in from Texas for a while. We also used 2.5 to kind of take out all the stuff around Agile, like planning poker and estimating and all that stuff. So we just break work down into manageable chunks. This is what our Agile looks like. It's very simple. We actually only use a board. We don't use Jira. In fact, you find that when we use tools, it has the opposite effect. It isolates people because they're only focused on what they're looking at in terms of their task. So we use a big board because we want the entire team to visualize the work. And in terms of accelerating DevOps, when we break down the work, we will actually start the conversation of testing first, right? You have this piece that you're working on, you have this microservice that you're writing, how are you going to test it, right? And that starts all kinds of conversations with the database guys, the ops guys, the testers, right? We get all of that ironed out front. In fact, it's some of the first sprints are purely spent on testing. We also encourage people that have typically never done a certain kind of role to take on that role. So in this case, the tester on the network team, she was very good at actually writing code, and so I asked her, well, why don't you just write one of the services and do the unit testing yourself? So she actually did that, and then here was her result. We had 27 tests written in a matter of a couple of days. She could actually do both things. And so don't take my word for it. This is one of our retros. You can see like a lot of the positive stuff, including that the coffee is really good in the dojo. We got the sprint board plan, story mapping, communication, information sharing, all good stuff. We usually see a lot of teams say a lot of that all the time. For the stuff that doesn't go so well, the coaches will surface this up as a theme to leadership, right? So in this case, this team had said, we have a lot of interdependencies with other teams. That's something the dojo will bring to leadership. Say, listen, here's the problem we're having, and this has an acceleration effect on DevOps, right? Because now the leaders know, oh, no, this is something I didn't realize that was happening, so maybe we'll do something. We give team names. So this is a really cool name that I wanted to share with you. Not the network team, but this team was migrating their on-premise infrastructure to AWS. And so one of the guys came up with this name, Cloudtalica. At the end of every dojo, we usually celebrate with the team. We'll have a cake. So I want to talk about kind of the results. We've been doing this for a year, a little bit more than a year. And we've had some really great success. We've had teams take the red pill, go really far down the rabbit hole. We've had directors that have changed their entire organizations to be more like dojo teams, where they're full stack teams. We've had other teams that have not been as receptive, and so one of the things we're working on this year, in typical DevOps fashion, we failed a couple times, and we're going to figure out what it is that we need to do better. So it's a continuously learning process. In terms of the acceleration, what I've seen is that having the teams work together, collaborate together, has a great effect on DevOps because it removes a lot of the communication barriers, right? Like emails, I would just kind of turn around and be like, all right, I need to test this, or this test failed, so you look at that, right? It has a great acceleration effect when you bring teams in to do the work. The other thing that I've seen, and I think was echoed by a couple of the other speakers, was that the product work is really important in DevOps. It's really important to understand the why as well as how you're doing things, right? I've seen a lot of engineers, when I walk the hallway, all they talk about is the tech. Like, hey, Manish, I want to do Docker. Okay, why do you want to do Docker? Because I can split an EC2 in 3 ways, right? I'm like, yeah, but that's just the how, man. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Who is it going to benefit? So I've seen by combining that product work with the DevOps work, it changes their perspective. Right? It makes them focus on why we're doing things. In one case, we actually went down with a team in Virginia and we paper prototyped. We didn't even do any IT work. And we found that all of their assumptions were wrong. And that IT project never even happened. Because just from the paper exercise, they found out that what they thought that the user would do was completely rejected by the user. So this kind of work is and should be something that we all focus on, right? We immediately start going into, oh, I'm going to do this way, this way. Figure out if it's really the right thing. That's one of the things we've learned. So I think I'm good on time. I know you're all anxious to get to lunch, so I didn't plan to make it too long of a talk. I did have a video to show you. Hopefully it works. Let's see.
Yeah.
The dojo is an immersive learning environment. It's modeled on a Japanese concept, a place you go to practice and master your skills. It's a service that we're providing to the enterprise that will allow them to rapidly upskill their teams. We're bringing teams in for extended periods of time, working with coaches to learn new tech skills while they're actually building the products that they own for the organization. The skills that we're largely focused on teaching are around things like DevOps, which is changing how people are delivering and automating technology, Agile, cloud skills.
Building that well-rounded individual is really what we want to deliver to the teams.
They come in and do a chartering session where all of their core stakeholders figure out the goals and objectives of the engagement. Work through a skills assessment. After we get through chartering, they do these rapid iterative sprints, which leads to mastery. Teams have to learn how to break their work down so that they can build a little bit, test it, demo it with the customer, quickly get feedback, and know if they're on the right path.
We ran into some of the challenges in the first 2 sprints that we had, which gives us the flexibility of trying something. If you fail fast, and then you move forward. The speed to market has been our continuous challenge, and dojos and the DevOps model definitely helps us accomplish that. This would be one of the biggest benefits to business.
The dojo really kind of puts them in an environment where they actually work far more cross-functionally.
The main benefit from my perspective in Dojo, I actually got so closer to my team members.
They understand the product better, understand what needs to be delivered better, so it improves overall quality of workplace and production.
Our culture here is very different. The open workspace and the open mindset, you'll feel the difference as soon as you step in.
Come on, a little bit louder, a little faster. This is very exciting. I love new technologies, and I love learning all the different things that can optimize our process. In 6 weeks, you can actually accomplish realistic goals.